Good evening. Welcome to Right Talk with Mike Lee. This season we've been focusing on the family so far, but today we're going to take a little bit of a turn and talk about the thing that is most important to family, that is generating money. So we're talking money, we're talking business this evening. My guests this evening are Evelyn Robertson, who I met a little while ago.
Yes.
And Debi
Dullye.
Like
Right.
Tom Dooley.
Exactly.
And
But not spelled the same.
they're going to educate me and hopefully you, certainly me, about things business. Well, there are basically 4 areas that we want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Evelyn, when you first talk about, tell us some of the challenges that are faced in HR and human resources area in 2019.
Thank you. So there are a number of things that are major challenges for business owners, and that's kind of who we focus on. So the 4 that we'd like to focus on today is some of the federal changes that have happened, state and local issues, and ensuring that business owners comply with those. Comply with the rules and regulations and legislation that comes out of the state. And then employee handbooks, developing those and the importance of that. And then lastly, and unfortunately, we're going to talk about workplace violence and how companies, what they need to do to ensure that they can prevent as best they can workplace violence from happening.
Now, Evelyn, before the show started, we were chit-chatting about some of the things that employers should and should not do. But before we get into what you expand on that, how did you two ladies meet? I'm just curious.
At
Well-
work?
At work?
We both work for the same organization. We work in different departments. We see each other, every time we're in the office because our locations are very close together. So we might pass each other, in the hall or in the break room.
And what organization is that? What's the name of that organization?
The name of that organization is Insperity, and Insperity is about 33 years old. It's a local company out of Kingwood, Texas, and it's been handling and helping business owners for 33 years. So it's an amazing company.
So what the 2 of you do interact, and where does it intersect?
Evelyn's in sales, and I service clients.
Okay.
She sells them, I serve them.
Okay.
That's simple.
Now, getting back to some of the things that you can make clear for us about what businesses should be concerned about in 2019, what they can and cannot do. You told me some surprising things before we came on the air.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know about things they can ask and can't ask and things like that.
That's
Give us
right.
a rundown on that.
Yeah, so there are a number of different employment laws that have shaped themselves over the last number of years, and it just seems like this area just continues to grow and explode and expand. And the business owners many times get caught off guard. And that's why we are in the business that we're in, to help the business owner with all of that. So there are a couple trends right now that are sweeping the country. One is pay equity, and in this pay equity area, basically employers can no longer, when they're in the interview process or before they hire someone, they cannot ask what their salary is. So they have to determine the salary that they would like to offer the candidate. They have to determine that based upon their own budget and other things other than the salary history. So they cannot focus on that. So that's one thing that's really important. Another is minimum wage. Minimum wage continues to change, throughout the United States. There are some states that have increased minimum wage. Many of them you have. Ohio, I think their minimum wage is now $8.55, but in Massachusetts, it's $12 an hour.
Now there's a big push talking about $15 an hour. Is there something magical about $15 or what?
I think they just look at that as a livable wage.
Okay.
I think it's just a livable wage. I mean, I think personally it would be very difficult to live off of $15 an hour, but, families do it all the time, and right now with it being as low as it is, I'm not sure how families get by. It's tough. It's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's where the 2 and 3 jobs thing situation.
Yeah.
comes
Right,
in.
Yeah,
exactly.
They're just trying to make ends meet.
Right, exactly. And when a state mandates that a certain wage needs to be offered or given to an employee, that absolutely impacts the business owner. So they're scrambling to kind of, keep their budget together and be profitable. and at the same time, complying with the law. So it's just tough. But that's one that definitely needs to be attended to, of course. You don't want to break that law.
When I was in college, I took a few econ courses and did pretty well in them too. But I always figured the thing that always bothered me about business is it seems like they feel like they're entitled to a profit, and not just a profit, but a profit more than they made last year. So to me, the sense of entitlement kind of is like pervasive. It's not just certain people. To me, it's like it's a business thing too.
Well, if a business earns it, then they're entitled to it, of course. I mean, they've done the hard work, they've put in the hours, blood, sweat, and tears, roll up their sleeves. And, we always say if you're not growing, then you're dying. So if a business continues to, attempt to reach its vision for itself, then they're probably going to try to grow year over year, and especially if they are on the stock exchange. If they're a publicly traded company, then the investors are definitely going to want to see some growth year over year.
You mentioned earlier some of the things you have to watch that businesses have to watch out for. Is that like a dichotomy between state things you have to watch out for versus federal things you have to watch out for?
Yes, and the two that I covered just recently, those were federal. And in the diversity area, like providing ample lockers, restrooms, things like that for transgender employees. And then there's a new movement now to have more women on corporate boards, so boards of directors, to have a higher percentage of women.
Is there a mandate in that area of some sort, or it's just sort of a quiet movement?
Movement at this point, yes. So, recently there was a movement, you might say, called the Me Too movement. And in that movement, as a result of that, now, in corporations and organizations and businesses, they're finding that there are much more complaints. It has increased by, over 50%, the number of complaints that are being elevated. And so that's a little bit different. And
I did. I want
yes.
Two things. One, I just wanted to clear up any confusion. Most people see a federal labor poster in their break rooms that says what the minimum wage is, and we're talking about $15 an hour, which is not what the federal minimum wage is. So the states that pass these laws, the way that when you're in that state, the way they decide what you're going to get paid is what would be more beneficial to the employee. It always sides with the employee, so that's why the $15 would prevail over what we have as a federal minimum wage.
Right.
And the other thing that I wanted to address, we were just talking about businesses and how profitability seems to be ranking really high, but I'll tell you what smart business owners are finding out is that if you don't take care of your people, you're not going to see profits. You have to take care of your people. So those employers that get that message are the ones that are going to be successful.
So people are still the most important resource.
Absolutely.
In fact, there's a new book out with that exact title called Take Care of Your People. It's a great book. Couple of other things like marijuana. I mean, that on the federal level, of course, it's still illegal federally, but there are states that are, ushering in new laws around that, that permit either.
Medicinal uses seems to be gaining a little foothold, a little ground, even in Texas, which is traditionally been very, very conservative.
Yes.
I mean, there were guys, when I first was in law school, guys were going to jail 50 years for weed.
Wow.
And things like that.
Wow. Yeah, that's changing, depending upon the state. Some is being decriminalized and some, for medicinal use, like you mentioned, is being allowed. And even some states are legalizing recreational use. So it's a state-to-state basis, but if an employer has a number of different locations, various states throughout the United States, they really have to be careful and attend to, the laws depending upon which state that they're in, and make sure that that those laws are manifested or written some kind of way inside of their employee handbooks.
And I think if you're drug testing as an employer, if you're doing drug testing, you really need to have a company that can not only run the test for you, but can tell you, okay, I have this remote employee in California where, you know, marijuana is legal, but I have a policy in my handbook that says that, you know, you can't take illegal drugs. So you need somebody that's really sharp on all the most current laws and regulations and what you have to do, and you know, because there's a notification period that you have to give the employee to come back and respond. And I mean, it's a lot, but you really need to have somebody sharp.
Yeah, with that. Another area that's kind of trending right now is this whole e-cigarette and vaping.
Yeah.
So employers are asked to regard e-cigarettes and vaping as if it was, I mean, because it does have not tobacco, but it has nicotine in it, that they treat it as if it were tobacco, and that those people that are vaping and using the e-cigarettes, that they must go outside and do that instead of inside the confines of the workplace.
There's something about that that's always bothered me. When I was, when I lived in Washington, D.C., in the wintertime, it's cold. I see people out there smoking cigarettes. I just kind of feel sorry. I just feel like, man, it's cold out there. I'd be smoking inside somewhere. Because, you know, it's just cold. And this vaping, I'm not sure that all the relevant data is in on that. To me, it's some foreign to the body. So it probably isn't that good. But it kind of pushes being like a safe alternative to smoking, but still has nicotine in it.
So it has nicotine.
But I think you can adjust the levels in a vape where you can't, not so much in a cigarette. I mean, I don't know. I can't get over the cost of a pack of cigarettes. I think it's crazy to spend that much money on tobacco, but that's just me.
I don't know what it costs a pack now. I remember when it used to be 50 cents a pack, 75 cents. I've heard $5 now.
I've heard that too.
Wow.
I have no idea. I think it's up there.
That used to be a nickel bag of weed when I was in college.
I'm sure that doesn't look the same either.
Dude, a nickel bag lasts you a long time.
One other area that employers need to pay attention to is biometrics and the whole privacy around that. There are some employers that are doing iris scans, you know, of the eye, or fingerprint checks, things like that. And there are laws around how long that information has to be maintained within an organization, and how it can be destroyed and when it can be destroyed. So so there's a lot of things that just really, all of these rules and regulations just really burden the business owner.
That's hard. It's hard.
It's hard. It's hard, and they need help. They need help dealing with all of this because they don't want to get in trouble, and they want to comply, I'm sure, you know, with the law and not get into trouble. But they just need some help.
And biometrics, by the way, you do have to have the consent of an employee to be able to take that type of data from an employee.
From what you ladies explained to me, running a business can be hard.
It is. It's
And
very
headache.
complex.
Yeah. Yeah, and headachy.
I mean, real
Yes.
headache, especially when you have members of my fraternity. I'm an attorney, you know. Members of my fraternity just lying in waiting for something to go wrong so they can pounce and try to get paid when you make any kind of small mistake, however small.
Well, there are organizations that are designed and in place specifically to help the business owner and to take that whole human resource burden off their shoulders so that they can focus on what they want to do. You know, I mean, they want to run a restaurant or any kind of business. They really want to focus on that instead of worrying about rules and regulations and all the rest of that. I mean, because, you know, you wouldn't expect, you know, a business owner runs a shoe shop to, because of various laws, to go back to law school and get a law degree so that he can deal with the business. No, he would hire a lawyer. So he can run his business. So he'd hire a lawyer or a CPA. And so the business that we're in here to take that whole human resource burden off their shoulders so they can run fast, they can grow, they can...
That's what I do all day. I talk to clients. They call me and have all of the things we're talking about, plus much more, and they're, Debbie, what do I do? What's the answer?
Now, Evelyn, there's some statistics that you had about some of these issues and problems. Are there that you can share with us?
Yeah, there are a number of different statistics that we have, and I'm going to bring some more up, especially when we get into the state side of it.
Okay.
But you know, we can talk about it now, because there's a lot of statistics around family leave, sick leave, family leave, and it's probably one of the biggest human resource issues that business owners deal with, and that it's been trending that way for a while, and it's expected to continue to trend as important in 2019. So there's laws that are mandating paid sick time on family leave, and a lot of these in the states, it's even more stringent than the federal regulations. So business owners really need to take care of it, especially if they have 50 employees or more. Then this is where the law kicks in for them. But in some states are now saying, okay, even if you have fewer than 50 employees, you still have to, you know, adhere to the law as it is at the federal level, still adhere to that. Vermont, there's an interesting thing going on in that state with time off. If an employee was a victim of a crime, in Vermont now is giving crime victims time off. They're giving them time off to recover from whatever's happened to them.
There's several states that do that. There's a lot there. There's another trend that you'll see that they can specifically, your policy specifically outlines that they can use that for that type of recovery.
They treat that just as they would sick leave or something like that.
Yeah.
Or
It's all-
maternity leave or whatever.
But they address it now, so now it's out there. So, you know, I think people are more apt to get help and actually use it, and resources are becoming available, you know, and I think it's a good thing.
Well, the Family Leave Act, I think that became really kind of popular when Clinton was president. I kind of remember that being one of his big things. But
That's a good
It's
point.
a-
I don't know exactly when it came, that FMLA came into place.
I
It's been a while.
kind of recall this been around that time.
yeah,
It was
you're
one
probably
thing.
right.
He was kind of big. He was kind of big on that.
You know, some states too are now requiring different types of laws when it comes to employee benefits. And there are some states that are now requiring the beneficiary of the benefit to work, you know, some up to 100 hours per month, or volunteer 100 hours per month to get their benefit. And they have about 2 months, I believe, to comply with that regulation before their benefits are taken away.
That's kind of harsh, man.
It is harsh.
I'm sure. I mean, I don't know. Hopefully, I mean, they're able-bodied and they can work. I mean, if they can't, then it's a different story. It's disability instead of just employee benefits. So there's another area that the law has not caught up to quite yet, and we are faced with this particular issue in the Austin area, and that's the electric scooters.
Yeah.
There's scooters everywhere, you know,
Yeah,
and I don't know.
lying here, lying there, leaning up against this pole. When they're riding those things, those guys, to me, they're pretty brave.
Yeah.
Because if anything happens, you're gonna lose. You have nothing.
Yeah, you have nothing.
You're practically, in a sense, butt naked.
I don't see
Real.
any helmets on their
Yeah.
heads.
Well,
I don't
plus
see any helmets.
pedestrians. I mean,
I don't know that there's a helmet requirement.
Not
I've
right
seen
now. That's what I'm
lots-
saying.
I've
The
seen
law has
lots of
not
them.
caught up. It has not caught up, so there's no helmet requirement. Right now, a lot of them are riding in the street, in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
They leave the scooter wherever. It could be piled up in front of a business owner's door. You know, what if their clients come out and trip over it? You know, so there's all kinds of things that are happening around that scooter space right now. And I'm sure, you know, from what I've heard, at least here in Austin, you know, the law is starting to catch up, but it hasn't yet. So it's just kind of a free-for-all.
I bet you it's kind of at the city level rather than anything else. Probably more at the city level, I would suspect.
After South by last week, I think they're having some thoughts on how they need to do that because I think it was a problem.
Yeah.
Now, with all this stuff going on, wouldn't that make it extremely difficult to develop employee handbooks to cover all this to address these kind of stuff?
Well, if you, it's not that it's so difficult, but you're right, maintaining it. You know, we recommend you update your handbook every 2 years, and I can tell you from talking to clients every day, they're not thrilled about that aspect because it takes a while to get through the handbook and look at it and see what you want to include, you don't want to include. So you're right, yes.
And for the employee, it's like a lot to go through. It's like to figure out what you're entitled to, what you should or could have. That's quite a bit. That's quite a bit of change to keep up with to me.
Yeah, for instance, social media. You know, I mean, are employees allowed to spend X number of minutes or time at the job on social media, you know, for their own purposes? So what does that look like? So that definitely should be mentioned, you know, in the employee handbook. Workplace conduct, things like that need to be in the employee handbook. And then, of course, the big one, you know, having an anti-sexual harassment policy, because as I mentioned, the Me Too movement, with that coming through, there have been so many sexual harassment claims, you know, after that. So it just, you know, I have a couple statistics here, and then Debbie's going to mention a few things. But EEOC Commission recovered nearly $70 million for victims of sexual harassment through administrative enforcement and litigation in 2018, and that was $70 million. That was up from $47 million in 2017. $47 million, then it jumped to $70 million.
Yeah, almost doubled.
Yeah, yeah. Deb, you're getting ready to say something.
A policy is not enough either. You have to have training. You can't give people, you know, kids and everyone a policy and just say read this and have a thorough understanding of it. And we're starting to see places like in New York now where they have mandatory training and they're very specific about what needs to be in that harassment training. So I see that as something that's, you know, coming along.
So, you know, some of our clients with our company, we have a department that covers the EEOC claims and things like that for our clients. And over the last year, our clients have, when you add them all up, you know, aggregate it, a 50% increase in claims
so
year over year.
are kind of contracting out the EEOC handle function?
Well, it's part
the
of
handle of EEOC issues. Are they being contracted out, or are they relying strictly on the lawyers?
No, absolutely,
both.
absolutely. That can be contracted out, you might say, or outsourced. It can be outsourced, and there are companies like ours that are professional employer organizations, PEOs. The IRS would call it a co-employment relationship. But a business can offload all of that to us, and then we take care of.
And we save the client money because we have a team of EEO investigators that can go. They can do a quick investigation, cover all the bases, have something ready to submit without involving attorneys.
Right. I was about to say that.
So in 2018, just last year, we helped clients resolve more than 830 matters, with more than 80% resulting in no financial impact. So I think we do a pretty good job with that.
I'm sure that the attorney's hourly would be a lot more than what you guys charge ordinarily. I would
Yes.
Oh,
I would
absolutely,
believe.
absolutely.
Yeah, I would think so too.
And then when you talk about economies of scale, it would be even bigger.
Right.
So it makes more sense to outsource it to specialists in the area.
You're exactly right.
Yeah, with our clients, it's all part of the deal.
Now I noticed when I was reading your bio, Miss Dullye,
Oh.
they said I had to think about Tom. Hang down your head, Tom Blues, hang down your head and cry. Boy, you run down the good stuff. It said that you had worked for a few Fortune 500 companies, such as, I'm nosy,
Home Depot.
Home Depot,
I worked there for 10 years
here in this area? Or-
in San Antonio.
Okay. So you've been in Texas a while, huh?
I have.
From? Where you from?
Well, originally my dad was in the service, so we moved a lot, all over the place. But I was in San Antonio probably 20 years, and then moved up here in 2010 to Austin.
Okay. Which one you like the best?
I like Austin.
I have to ask.
I like Austin. Yeah, I'm a fan.
Okay. That's different. My first experience with Austin, I didn't like it too much at all. I thought it was like a big college town. It reminded me too much of my college, and I didn't want anything to remind me of my college experience. Nothing. I want to forget college as much as possible.
Wow.
And then law school superseded that. I didn't have any trouble forgetting law school. I forgot it the day I left. Because it was 3 long painful years, and that's enough. That's enough. Pills, it made that 4 seem like a drop in the bucket. But how long have you ladies been in this employee management field, so to speak?
With this particular company, I've been there 6 years.
Okay. And you, Evelyn?
This particular company, a year and a half,
Year and a half.
but in the industry, over 20 years.
But you're in sales.
Yes, in
You're
that
inside.
space.
Debbie, you're inside. You're kind of like outside, right?
Right, and we do consultative selling, so it's not just, counting up the numbers and all that, but we come out and we meet with business owners. I meet with, on average, about 150 business owners a year, and we really, work with them shoulder to shoulder to understand what their issues are, what their needs are, and figure out the best solution to provide for them. And so we do a good job of listening, and then we kind of just translate all of their needs and requirements and desires into the solution that we can present for them.
I love my job.
Yeah.
I go home every day and I can say, I have gone home and said, okay, this was really frustrating, but most of the time I really help these people. I mean, they're glad to be able to call me, and they're glad to have some guidance, and it's win-win.
Yeah.
It seems to me to be really, really helpful. The expertise that you offer. And in the long run, what you do makes for a better situation for employers and employees and their families. Hopefully everybody's a little bit happier.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's the goal.
Absolutely. So there are a lot of things that are difficult sometimes for a business owner, like if there's a death, on the job. And we had a client that took a team to Las Vegas for recognition, and when it was time to leave, one was missing, and he had passed away in his sleep. So how do you deal with that? So here you are off in another state. How are you going to deal with that? All they had to do, since they were one of our clients, is pick up the phone and call us, and then we help. How are you going to notify the spouse? How are you going to get the body back? I mean, all those kinds of things. These are just some of the types of things that we deal with, in human resources. And there are others that are a little bit more difficult. Like workplace violence, for instance. With workplace violence, that is something that unfortunately has been increasing year over year. And I've got some statistics on that one, but it's one of the major causes of death in the corporate world, second only to transportation. So,
you know what I found so interesting too in putting some of this material together was that workplace violence. You hear about it and you kind of think, well, somebody just snapped and they went, but that's really not true. There are warning signs. There are things that happen if you are training people and giving them direction on how to see all these warning signs. You could head it off. Because I mean,
Right.
yeah, it's
So
something.
at that point, you're talking about saving human lives.
Exactly. And just a little bit of awareness, can mean a lot, make a big difference.
So this kind of awareness about what to look for in a situation like that would be part of the training that
Oh, yeah.
that is recommended.
Absolutely.
And the company you work for provides that kind of training?
Absolutely. Yes.
I do it.
Now, you do it?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So, I mean, the impact of violence in the workplace, it's far-reaching. When you talk about the employees that are there, that are left, their morale, the reputation of the company, in fact, the revenue that it's still trying to grow, could be impacted by it. It just has a huge impact. And one of the statistics I have on that is that it accounts for about 9% of all the workplace fatalities. This was in 2015. And according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, 17% of the workplace deaths were as a result of violence. So people are not just having heart attacks and things. I mean, there's something going on, something else going on in there. About 2 million people each year report some sort of violence at their workplace. That's a huge number. 2 million people? Yeah. That is huge. And in addition to that, it's estimated that 25% of issues in the workplace around violence go unreported. So there might be some fear of reprisal, or there's no open door policy.
Who knows?
Now, Evelyn and Debi, in all this that you described seems very complicated, seems a little bit complicated, and a little bit burdensome. And if small businesses is a big sector of what we do in this country, can they really afford you?
Absolutely. And since you opened that door, as they say in the law, you're a lawyer.
You walk right
You
in.
walk right in, I'll walk right in. It is very, very reasonable. I'll just say that. And every proposal that we give a prospective client is custom made for them.
Okay.
So it depends on what services they would like. We would build that proposal just for them.
I would think that someone might want to contract with you, if for no other reason, for insurance purposes, nothing else. If nothing else.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's just
That's
comes to me, just
Yeah.
sitting here, just thinking about things.
Yeah, and things like workers' compensation, even though it's not mandatory in the state of Texas, we require all of our clients to have workers' compensation and EPLI insurance to protect them. And we have over 100,000 clients. And if you add up all the employees, it's about 2 million employees. And when you look at that pool of employees, it's a low-risk pool. So as much as we love firemen and policemen and military, that's a little bit too high risk, for us. So we keep a low-risk pool. We keep it helps keep all of the fees for the services low or reasonable.
I was just wondering, just because when I think about all the stuff you said, I think about a small businessman might be it would be mind-boggling if I had a small business to have to think about all this stuff.
Yeah,
So it would behoove you to have someone who could help you in those areas.
Right. And so instead of having a business owner pulling their hair out or taking like 5 or 6 days just to complete the payroll.
I don't have anything to pull,
Oh,
so it can't be me.
okay, all right. Yeah, it's just it is burdensome, and and so we just come alongside them and help them with it. So we become partners. We become co-employed.
Okay.
So I don't know if you wanted to hear any more about workplace violence, but
I do.
You do? Okay. Just so happens I have a few more statistics.
Tell me about how dangerous it is out there.
Well, in recent years, the frequency and severity of workplace violence has escalated, and it's reported that in 2017 there were over 346 mass shootings compared to only 270 in 2014. Now, I'm not saying only just to minimize it, but that's a huge jump. There's an Office of Victims of Crime Statistics, and their reports show that the numbers are trending up, unfortunately. Over the last 10 years, the number of mass shootings was 2.4 times greater than the previous decade. And the majority of those mass shootings were inside of a business. Yeah, so that's pretty bad.
Oh, that's scary. That's scary.
Yeah. So what does that result in? Over $55 million in lost wages and 1.8 million work days lost
So that's
because
a lot
of
of
workplace
productivity
violence.
is lost.
That's right. And that hits the bottom line. That hits the profit, you know, for a company. The annual comprehensive cost to a business, including the loss, now is about $130 billion compared to only $36 billion in 1995. That's just a ridiculous jump. So this workplace violence, and you know, it impacts, of course, the victim, and it impacts the coworkers, it impacts clients, it impacts the executives and the shareholders, it impacts the community. So it has a wide reach, and there's all kinds of losses, not just the medical bills, but then there's the fees, workers' comp and legal fees, and then indirect losses because of lost productivity, and people are upset and sad and things like that. So it's just a huge, huge drain on a company. So that's why it's so important to get that, to put measures in place to prevent it. You know, training is one, repeated training, you know, and then awareness. And there are other levers that can be put in place to help.
Now, you said that the company with which you're affiliated has been doing business for 33 years, is that?
33 years.
33?
Yeah.
Is the business, has it been steadily increasing, or you have up and down periods like any other business?
Well, fortunately, I mean, it's just a blessing that, I mean, every year, year over year, our revenues are just increasing. We're #1 in our space right now. We have been for a while. In fact, today is our 33rd birthday. You have some cake for us? Today is the actual day. It's our 33rd birthday. Our CEO is a visionary, and
Who is that?
his name is Paul Sarvadi,
Okay.
and
Started in a garage. Started the business in a
Yeah.
garage.
it's like, what was it, 600 square feet, and he had 2 desks and 1 phone. He and his business partner, and off they went, and they launched it, and didn't look back. You know, the first year, I think they brought in something like $980,000 in their first year. That's huge.
Just consulting.
Acting as well, back then there was no industry called professional employer organization. So our company helped create the industry.
And the
had
designation, right?
with the designation, and had to go through all the work of, you know, meeting with the IRS and getting it sanctioned and getting it legitimized as an actual industry. So we did all that legwork.
What did you call that again?
Co-employment,
Co-employment?
yeah, or PEO, which is Professional Employer Organization.
Professional Employer Organization. Okay.
Yeah,
PO.
PEO.
Okay.
PEO, I know I should slow it down. PEO. But yeah, but we're here. We have a big heart, you know, especially for small to medium-sized businesses. And I know we can handle, you know, larger organizations, but our key focus is companies that have at least 5 employees and up to 5,000 employees, and that's kind of our sweet spot.
Okay.
And so we can help.
It just seems to me that it'd be more suitable to, the bigger the company, the better the fit would be, it seems to me. That's just me sitting here.
Not really, because once you get to a certain point, I think when companies get to a certain point, you look at the cost of what a PEO is, and then you look at bringing all that in-house, because you're so large. And a lot of companies that's what they end up doing. They bring it inside. So, like you said, our sweet spot is just right there for those employees that don't want to go spend all that money bringing in a whole HR system and HR people and all of the people.
Yeah, so it kind of ebbs and flows. So some organizations, they'll start off small, and then they just kind of broker everything out. So they might broker out their medical, and they broker out their payroll, and they broker out their workers' comp, and they just, they've got all these different vendors that they have to deal with. And then they, light bulb comes on, and they go, oh, they might talk to us, and they might pull all that together and just have one organization help them with that. So it just kind of depends on the natural life cycle of the company and where they are, of the business and where they are. And sometimes they go back and forth. They'll start off with, all the brokers, then they'll bring in a professional employer organization like us, and then they might grow larger, like Debbie mentioned, 5, 10,000 plus employees, and then have their own department inside of their company. So, and then even at that size, they might still need some help, some outside help. So, so it's really great to be able to be the type of company that has high integrity. We keep our promises. We help business owners because we know that to the extent that businesses grow and are more profitable, then the community prospers. So we're focused on that as well.
Well, to the extent the business prospers, then families can prosper and the community can prosper.
Right. That's right.
So what you ladies do is kind of like in the background, not necessarily out of sight, but kind of in the backdrop, so to speak. You're not out front.
That's right.
The
Yeah,
business is out front. You guys are helping the business do its thing.
Right.
Exactly.
You're exactly right. So we're not there on site doing anything. Yeah, so we are here.
Well,
in
that's
the
not true.
background. Well, unless we're needed on site.
There you go.
Unless we're needed on site. But typically, we are on the phone with them, or guiding and counseling, coaching them through certain things.
Mine's probably a little more hands-on than yours, though.
Okay. Speak.
But I mean,
No, go, Debbie.
no, because I mean, you have all that at the front end, getting the client and
Right.
selling them and all that, and then when it turns over to service, that's when I start getting the calls and go out and help with terminations or training or whatever it is that they need.
Yeah.
Counseling.
Plus, you guys like a tag team, like on
Right.
like on Raw and SmackDown.
It takes a village, right?
We have an excellent team, and many of our teammates have long tenures and upper level degrees. There's an organization called the Society for Human Resource Managers, and they offer upper level degrees in human resources. So many of our staff people have these upper level degrees. Been with us a long time, and one thing that I'm really proud of is that our clients many of them have been with us a long time. I have the great fortune of having a client here that's been with us for 20 years. Over 20 years, we had a big celebration for them when that took place. But we have others, throughout the country. In fact, we have 70 locations throughout the United States.
70 locations?
And we're growing. We're expected to double. So.
Well, where's the main office? New York?
It's right here in Texas. It's in Kingwood, Texas.
In Kingwood?
Yeah, right outside Houston. You know Kingwood?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in used to be Congressman Ted Poe's area.
Oh, okay.
I know that.
Oh, yeah.
I know Ted.
Very good, very good, yes. So, so we're right down the street, you might say. Texas is huge, so.
Yeah, you're between Houston and Huntsville. Right at 45, right?
Well, how do I drive out there? I drive the.
You have the country
Either
road.
Well, now they have that nice
10,
loop
I
that
think.
goes all the way around Houston. That's what I take right over to
The
Kingwood.
Grand? Mm-hmm. The Grand goes
Was
way
it
out there?
99?
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Okay. That's the loop around the loop.
Mm-hmm.
The loop around Houston takes 45 minutes, and the loop around the ground
Wow.
must take
It takes,
hour and a half or so.
Wow.
it probably takes at least 30 minutes just to get from there, from just the segment that I have to go, you know, when we go to Houston.
So they started, the company began in Kingwood, and now it has 70 offices in like where?
Just about every state in the United States. We're still waiting for our location in Hawaii, right, Debbie? And we're going to head out there.
Yeah.
So we do, and we have service centers as well that have staff like Debbie there to help help our clients.
It's in almost
So-
every state in Ohio.
Yes, and we're
But-
publicly traded as well. I think, did I mention
You
that?
publicly traded now?
We're
What?
publicly traded now.
Yeah.
Yeah, NSP.
Okay.
Stocks going through the roof. Should I say that? Anyway, we're doing really
I
well.
don't think we'd be busted for insider trading around here. But wow, they
Yeah.
started in Kingwood in a garage.
It's an amazing story, really. I mean, it is.
And the founder is still the current CEO. Still there.
Still around.
Yes, he is. Full of life, loves what he does, you know, loves touching organizations and helping companies. And the book I mentioned earlier is the book that he just recently wrote. And it's getting a lot of attention, a lot of traction. And he's one of the thought leaders in this whole human resource space. And so his book is Take Care of Your People. And it's a beautiful book.
The same idea of
Read
a
it.
family. You take care of
I
your
should have
family.
brought one for you.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll bring one for you.
for sure. Now, I'm just wondering, what do you see, what do you think will be the biggest challenge that you face in the future in your area of expertise?
Right now, I'm thinking they're looking at changing some laws, the Fair Labor Standards Act, and increasing the minimum wage for exempt employees, which is going to have a big impact on employers. We're in a viewing period right now, and I think we come out of it in May sometime. But it's substantial. I mean, it's gone from, it used to be 24,000 that was put in place like in 2004, and then they tried to do a large increase in 2017, and it didn't make it, and now they're coming back with about 33,000.
I was going to guess
Wow.
30. I was going to guess 30. No,
That
30 is a
would
little
have been
too low. That's a
close.
little too. That's a little too low, though. And you're talking about the employee that just has to just work, doesn't have to keep hours and punch
That's
the clock
right.
and all that
They're
good stuff.
exempt from the
Right.
minimum,
Time card.
the
Right.
hourly wage overtime.
That's interesting.
It is, and they're looking at increasing the minimum wage as well. I don't have numbers on that yet, but they're talking about it. So I think it would be a good thing.
I think one of the things you mentioned early, Evelyn, was not income disparity, but you know, we have a few people make a lot of money, a lot of people make a little money.
Right, yeah.
The,
Pay equity.
Pay equity, yeah. That's I think that's one of the challenges that I expect that to be a campaign issue somehow. It's not 2020 yet, but I smell it coming. Because there's, in a sense, there's too much of a gap between rich and poor.
I agree.
Almost there's no, it's almost as if there's no middle. Either at the top or either at the bottom. Either entertaining, play basketball, baseball, that good stuff, or you're at the bottom, working in a restaurant. There's not a lot of middle to me.
But these type of changes that they're at least proposing, if they would go through, that would be very helpful. It would be very helpful to the middle class.
It's almost as though the middle class has to be created all over again in light of the technological advances that we've made.
Yeah, the tech world, coding, cyberspace, all of that, I mean, it's changed everything. And that's why I think in high schools, the STEM programs are really important to get kids interested in technology, interested in science, so that they can be a part of the economy when they graduate or when they go on to the universities. So that's really important, and I think that I think the whole issue of privacy, especially because of computers and technology, is going to be huge. You know, how do you protect yourself? Right now, people have no feeling, at least at this point, that their information is private. They think that everything is out there, you know, their social security numbers, all of that. So it's important, I think, for employers to do their very, very best to protect the employees' information, protect their personal information. So I think that's going to become a larger issue.
Everybody says things are going so fast with technology and all that, but I'll tell you, this is the slowest it's ever going to be. And that's the truth.
Right. I get that.
Wow.
Yes.
I know I was just chit-chatting with my wife the other day about, and I looked at my phone and I thought, well, my dad would really trip out at this. Or her grandfather. Her grandfather was like a self-trained, self-made engineer.
Wow.
Oh, my.
She's not far behind. She's very techie, very hands-on, gadgety kind of stuff, which I know nothing about. I'm a pen and paper guy.
Well, you're lucky.
Yes. I know that.
Well, she can teach you.
I'm a pen and paper guy. I'm very teachable. I'm all about learning.
There you go. Me too.
It's my personal philosophy is that when you stop learning, the minute you stop learning, you stop living. The minute you stop living, you start dying. So I want to learn
That's
something
right.
every day because I kind of like this existence. It's all I know. It's kind of cool.
Kind of
I'm
cool.
with you.
There you have it.
I like it.
If there's something better, no one's come back to tell us about it. I don't know if it's milk and honey up there or what, but
Oh, there's some place. You
I'll
gotta
take
get there.
I'll take the scotch right now. That's cool with me. That's how I roll on this side. But as I said, I expect that business development and economics will be the keys in this next election, I believe. And I'll go on record. I told them, I bet when Trump was coming down the elevator, I bet one of my friends, one of my Democratic friends, $100 he'd win, and they laughed me out. They laughed at me. Everybody be like, yeah. I still haven't got my $100.
That's right. I was going to ask you what you
Boy.
did with the $100.
They won't pay me.
My goodness.
To call
Wow.
that, you should have gotten the money,
Yeah,
because I
yes.
couldn't believe it either.
Or more.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought it.
I just had a feeling. And then I was in Houston one time, and I was pumping gas, and a lady pulled up a car with a bunch of kids. I always ride around with these conservative magazines and books and reading for kids. I said, lady, you might want to read this book. You know, the kids might like this. And at first she said, I don't talk politics. After I gave her that book, it's like I had a new friend. I came home and told my wife, I said, baby, Trump's going to win. There are no people going to come out and vote for him who've never voted before, I'm telling you. And that's what happened.
And that's what happened.
I've met a
That's
few
right.
of them who had never voted before and voted for him. And this time,
You called it.
he may not win the popular vote because the crowds on the East Coast, because the coastal. But that middle, I expect him to win bigger this time than he did last time.
I think it touched the hearts of people when, you know, he talked about the forgotten man, the forgotten men and women in the country, and, you know, the Appalachian Mountain people and people in the mid part of the country,
Nixon called him the silent majority.
silent majority. Yeah. So they just had something to hang on to, you know, and came out and supported him.
Now, I know he says things sometimes that makes people wish he hadn't said that makes them uncomfortable. But I think he says what some people really think, but won't say it because someone may get upset because we're in a atmosphere where everyone can't wait to be offended. I want to thank you, ladies, for being on the show this
Aw.
evening.
You're welcome.
This was too short.
Thank you.
I could go a little further and talk.